In this episode,
I actually enjoy Twilight. I'm not one of those guys that watch Die Hard, right? So, hi guys there, and welcome back to each and every one of you. Today we're going to be talking about the story for the World Soul Saga. World of Warcraft is going very much from a bog standard MCU superhero film, like it used to be with the Thors and the Iron Mans and all that, to a more Twilight or even 50 Shades of Grey type of energy. Now, in writing terms, and I'm really going to have to thank a writer by the name of Chico Kukimura or something. I can't pronounce that last name. I am so sorry for that. She made the point that there's two types of writing. There's feminine writing and then there's masculine writing. And these may sound more gendered than what they are, but they're not really. What they effectively boil down to is feminized writing focuses a lot more on relationships, inner relationships, and personal relationships, connections that characters have with one another. Male writing or masculine writing focuses a lot more on lore. It focuses a lot more on broad strokes. Let's get into the action. Let the people beat the shit out of each other. What ended up in World of Warcraft is that the story has shifted way more to the feminine side of things, and there's almost been this complete neglect of the masculine energy. Twilight here would be a great example of a story that is steeped in feminine writing, but they needed to have that underlying threat. So the masculine energy needed to be there in order to capture both male and female audiences, in order to ensure that the story is actually told in the best way possible for the largest audience possible. Is it true that some people don't like it at all? Yeah, of course. That's always going to happen, right? Art is incredibly subjective. Hi, sorry, future Accolon here. Just quickly wanted to throw this in here because there's going to be confusion, and I already know that there's going to be like a lot of comments saying stuff about, oh, but what about this? What about that? The perfect story, the best stories, are stories that combine these two elements. So it combines more masculine writing, big burly men beating the crap out of each other, or, women beating the crap out of each other, or out of, the two groups beating each other, the action, right? And then also the relationships. That's why even in things like Marvel films, Iron Man, Captain America, all of these films, they also explore relationships because they're important. You have to have both of those elements. Otherwise, the story will feel flat. The story will feel incomplete. If you literally just had a movie where it's action nonstop, like from the first minute, it's just people beating the shit out of each other until the last minute, very quickly, it gets very, very boring. And oftentimes what happens there is the action starts to feel dragged out. It starts to feel like, oh, what the hell? I can't do this anymore. The same for a story that is literally just charged in feminine energy. Again, it's going to alienate. People want to see a mix of both. The best stories have that mix. And here I will use Twilight once again as an example. In Twilight, you have the love story, and that love story of basically it's a modern day Beauty and the Beast kind of story, right? It's the girl Bella that tames the beast and gets the beast to be more human. And then you have, of course, the epic three-way love story with the clashes between Edward and Jacob that takes place. And that, too, creates more of a masculine energy within the story. But then you have the vampires that's fighting each other, and that is, again, masculine energy. Now, the point here isn't that masculine energy and feminine energy is particularly right or written for a male and a female audience. That's not what it's about. It's called masculine and feminine writing, and I'm sure there's other names for it as well. There's plenty of names for it. But the reason it's called that is the broad audience that it appeals to. So the vast majority of men will prefer more masculine writing, and the vast majority of women will prefer more feminine writing. But you get a lot of women that love masculine writing that isn't so interested in the whole feminine writing thing. And then you will get a giant audience of men that prefer feminine writing and isn't that interested in masculine writing. And this will literally work out. That's why the base stories is a combination of the two. Yeah. Anyways, back to the video. The problem, in my opinion, is that the writers didn't keep their original audience in mind. The majority of people that play WoW today are people that play WoW because of how the stories used to be, right? It used to be more masculine, and that's why they play it, both male and female. The girls that play WoW today didn't start playing WoW because it was so feminine energy. Wasn't, right? They preferred that type of storytelling where burly men are beating the shit out of each other and girls are beating the shit out of each other. And that was just fun for everyone to be involved in. And with the new writing style, it's like the developers have moved the story completely away from the audience to a new audience that they're hoping to capture. And it doesn't make sense because your original audience is now left with a sort of weird just moment in time where they're not entirely sure what to do. The story no longer speaks to them. They find most of it incredibly cringe, and you can see all of the reactions to all of the newest cinematics that proves that people are finding the new stories a bit cringe. They're just not enjoying it as much as they used to. Let's imagine that this truly is the new direction for WoW. The WoW writers want to write a more feminine charged story. They want to focus more on relationships and on inner relationships and friendships rather than on big burly men beating the shit out of each other. Well, in that sense, what ends up happening is your original audience, your core audience, starts increasingly pulling away from the story. They start turning away from the story and instead start focusing on their own story, right? Or start focusing on other stories, and they start playing WoW purely for the gameplay, purely for the fact that they're raiding or for the fact that they're PvPing, but the story itself, they're increasingly finding themselves disconnected from that story. Now, you could say, well, Akko, I play the game like that, and it's perfectly fine. But I would argue the fear that I have for this specifically is that stories is such an integral part of the way in which humans make connections to worlds and universes and things. If the story, the narrative, doesn't exist, human beings tend to disassociate very, very quickly with the thing. Facts, sure, you could say facts are cool. Facts, sure, you could say facts are cool.
Another one.
Sure, cool. Facts, you could say facts are sure. But they're not really. People want a story. There's nothing that sells better than a good story. And I fear that if World of Warcraft goes down this path where it continues to explore this new way of telling the story, where the focus is a lot more on relationships rather than on, the actual story or the action of the story, I fear that the core audience disassociates with the story more and more, and eventually, with no narrative to keep them engaged and connected to the world, it becomes easier for the core audience to move away from the world entirely. To just step away from the world and be like, well, that's enough of that. I have no reason to be here. There's no story, no narrative that connects me here. So now I can just leave. And you may say, but Akko, I've been playing this game for years and I love the raids, I love the dungeons. But okay, let's say there's a patch where Blizzard completely screws up Mythic Plus. And I mean completely screws up Mythic Plus. And maybe they completely screw up class balance and raids are a complete disaster. If there is no narrative that players tie themselves to and that ties them to the world, it becomes easier for that player to go, well, that's me. I'm out. I find no interest in this game. I don't want to play this because I have disassociated with the world. The only thing that kept me here was the dungeons, was the raids, and now that's been screwed up. I'm going to leave. And now that could be offset. If Blizzard changes the story and they manage to capture a new audience that prefers this more feminine style of writing, the more focus on relationships, yeah, that completely sets it off. Then you don't care that your core audience is leaving because you're replacing that core audience with a brand new audience that happens to love the way the story is going now. And that's not to suggest that all of the players in WoW hate the story. No, there are definitely people that prefer the more feminine style storytelling, the more relationship focused storytelling. And that's perfectly fine. I'm not judging that at all. I can appreciate a good love story. I'm on record as saying One Tree Hill is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. And that's a very feminine charged story. The same is true for Twilight. I actually enjoy Twilight. It's not the best writing. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's one of the best films ever, but I enjoyed it for what it was. It was a good romantic story. And there was some vampires that glittered. That was a bit cringe, but overall, I kind of enjoyed it, right? I'm not one of those guys that I just watch Die Hard, right? I watch that too, and I like that too. But the point is, as WoW moves away from its audience, what keeps the audience there if there is no narrative that the audience connects to more? And it's just a fear that I have, and I wanted to suggest, I wanted to speak about it because ultimately I think that's important. But taking up enough of your time, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe over on Patreon, $1 a month keeps this channel free from sponsorships that want to sell you crap that you do not need. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you so much for watching. Be kind to each other, be good to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace. I actually enjoy Twilight.